In the grand halls of 17th century England, where silk whispered and chandeliers glowed, a small, gentle heartbeat echoed beneath the splendor of crowns. It didn't belong to a soldier or a statesman, but to a dog whose gaze melted the hearts of kings and whose presence softened the sternest courts of power. This was the beginning of the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, a breed born not from the fields of labor or the trials of war, but from the quiet chambers of affection. In an age defined by conquest and ceremony, King Charles II of England found solace not in politics, but in his dogs. He was rarely seen without them, tiny, long-eared spaniels that followed him through corridors of power, sat beside his throne, and even slept upon his royal bed. They were his constant companions, playful, devoted, and impossibly elegant. Courtiers whispered that the king loved his dogs more than he loved his crown. When ambassadors arrived with treaties, the little spaniels trotted between their robes, blissfully unaware that history was being written above their heads. They didn't care for thrones or titles, they cared for hearts. The breed's charm was undeniable. Silky coats that shimmered like royal velvet, large dark eyes that spoke with quiet emotion, and a gentle temperament that turned even the most hardened noble into a child again. They became living symbols of affection in a world obsessed with power. But the Cavalier's story didn't begin in England alone. Their ancestors came from small toy spaniels brought over from continental Europe, dogs favored by French and Italian nobility, often painted beside queens and princesses. They were the chosen muses of artists like Titian and Van Dyck, forever immortalized beside their mistresses in flowing gowns. When these elegant lapdogs reached England, they found their perfect admirer in Charles II. He adored their spirit, cheerful yet dignified, playful yet poised. Under his reign, they became the living emblem of a new kind of royalty, one defined not by power, but by tenderness. And so the people began to call them King Charles Spaniels. Wherever the king went, they followed, to council meetings, to the theatre, to hunting trips where they watched from velvet-lined carriages. They were small, but their presence filled every room with warmth. Artists painted them in portraits of royal families, children clung to them in palace gardens, and poets wrote verses about their grace. They weren't just dogs, they were the soul of a softer England. But beyond their beauty lay something deeper, a rare ability to mirror human emotion. They seemed to understand sadness, to sense when a heart needed comfort. In an era when kings ruled by fear, these little dogs ruled by love. For Charles II, who carried the weight of a divided kingdom, they were his refuge. When he laughed, they danced. When he grieved, they pressed close to his side. And when he died in 1685, it was said his spaniels waited at his chamber door, whimpering softly as the crown passed to another head. Yet time is unkind to royal favorites. New rulers brought new fashions. The world that had once adored these spaniels began to change, slowly, silently, and irrevocably. The breed that had been born in palaces was about to vanish from them. But the spirit that had comforted kings would not die so easily. It would sleep, quietly, patiently, waiting for the day it would be remembered again. After the death of King Charles II, the laughter of spaniels slowly faded from the marble corridors of the English court. New monarchs rose, colder, sterner, less enchanted by the softness of small dogs that had once warmed the laps of queens. The world was changing. Empires expanded, revolutions brewed. and the gentle art of companionship was replaced by the machinery of ambition. The little dogs of the Cavaliers, with their kind eyes and open hearts, belonged to another age. Fashion turned its gaze elsewhere. Larger, shorter-nosed breeds became symbols of modern prestige. Breeders began to alter the once delicate spaniel to match new tastes, flattening its face, shrinking its muzzle, and changing its noble silhouette. The graceful, long-nosed companions of Charles's time were slowly erased, their portraits the only proof they had ever existed. What had been the Cavalier Spaniel was now simply the King Charles Spaniel, still charming, still royal in name, but no longer the same in spirit. Their faces had become rounder, their eyes larger, their expressions more doll-like. They had lost the look of the loyal watcher at a king's side, replaced by the pampered ornament of the Victorian age. Yet somewhere, in quiet English villages and countryside estates, whispers of the old type remained. A few families still remembered the spaniels from the portraits, those long-legged, gentle-eyed dogs that had once run freely through palace gardens. They spoke of them not as a breed, but as a memory. Centuries passed, wars came and went. The world forgot the Cavaliers, but love, the kind that defines this breed, has a strange way of surviving extinction. In the early 1900s, a few scattered dogs still carried fragments of the old Cavalier bloodline. Their lineage was fragile, hidden among toy spaniels and forgotten pedigrees. But fate was about to turn, because sometimes history waits for the right soul to remember it. That soul appeared in the 1920s England in the form of an American named Roswell Eldridge. He wasn't a nobleman, nor a breeder of fame. He was simply a man who had seen an old painting, one depicting King Charles II surrounded by his spaniels, and found himself haunted by their image. He wondered, where had those dogs gone? When he traveled to England, he was shocked to discover that the breed had vanished, replaced entirely by the modern toy spaniel with its flat face and bulging eyes. The elegant dogs of the royal portraits were gone. So, at the Crufts Dog Show of 1926, he made a bold announcement. He offered a cash prize, £25, to any breeder who could produce a dog resembling those from the days of King Charles II. The challenge sounded simple, even quaint, but it sparked a revolution. Within a few years, dedicated breeders began searching through rural lines, tracing forgotten bloodlines, and reviving the ancient form. The result was astonishing. From the ashes of history, the old Cavalier returned, long muzzle, soulful eyes, feathered ears, and that gentle, knowing expression that once melted the hearts of kings. By 1928, a new standard had been written, and in 1945, after the chaos of another world war, the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel was officially recognized as a distinct breed. The king's companion had been reborn, not in a palace, but in the hearts of ordinary people who believed love was worth preserving. The silent years had ended, and what emerged from them was not just a breed resurrected, but a symbol of how tenderness can outlast time itself. The year was 1945. The guns of war had finally fallen silent, and a weary world longed for gentleness again. In homes once filled with fear, people sought warmth, laughter, something to remind them that peace could still exist. And among the ruins of a broken age, a small dog quietly stepped forward to help heal the world's heart. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, reborn from memory and devotion, had returned. It was not the grand nobles or the wealthy who carried this breed back into light. It was the ordinary, the farmers, the families, the dreamers who believed that something beautiful was worth saving. They didn't breed cavaliers for show. They bred them for the way they made people feel. For the first time in centuries, the old royal spaniel walked not in palaces, but in cottages. They curled up beside fireplaces instead of thrones. They played with children in small gardens rather than royal courtyards. And yet, wherever they went, they brought the same quiet dignity, that same softness of spirit that once captivated a king. Across Britain, their popularity grew quickly. In a nation trying to rebuild, their gentle optimism was contagious. They didn't care who you were or what you had lost. They cared only that you were there. To be loved by a cavalier was to be reminded that life could still be kind. Soon the rest of the world began to notice. In the 1950s and 1960s, the Cavalier crossed oceans, finding new homes in America, Australia, and beyond. In each country they seemed to bring the same unspoken message, that grace and joy could coexist, that even in modern life, tenderness had a place. But their revival wasn't just about nostalgia, it was about survival through compassion. Every breeder who worked to restore them did so not for profit, but for preservation, an act of love passed from one generation to another. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel Club was formed to protect their integrity and character. The standard wasn't measured in muscle or size, but in expression, that unmistakable look of warmth and understanding in their eyes. A cavalier didn't need to do tricks or feats. Its gift was its presence. In the decades that followed, the breed began to weave itself into culture again. They appeared in films, novels, and portraits, just as they had centuries before, not as props, but as symbols of innocence and devotion. When a cavalier sat quietly beside a child in a storybook, readers didn't just see a dog, they saw love made visible. By the turn of the century, they had become one of the world's most beloved companion breeds. But despite their growing fame, the essence of the Cavalier never changed. They remained what they had always been, a mirror of the human heart. Loyal, forgiving, endlessly affectionate. They didn't judge, didn't hold grudges, didn't measure worth in achievement or wealth. To them, everyone was royal. Every home was a palace, every human a king or queen to adore. It is said that when a cavalier sits in your lap and looks into your eyes, it sees not who you are, but who you could be, softer, kinder, more whole. Their revival was not just the return of a breed. It was the return of a philosophy that gentleness is strength and love is power. And as they spread across the world, that philosophy began to heal in quiet ways, one family, one heart, one lonely evening at a time. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel was no longer the pet of kings. It had become the companion of humanity. To understand the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, one must first understand love, not the kind that fades with time, but the kind that endures quietly, without demand or condition. Because to love a cavalier is to see that love reflected back, pure and unchanged. They are not loud about it. They do not bark for attention or chase for praise. Instead, they love through presence, the simple act of being there, by your side when you wake, at your feet when you work, resting against your chest when the world feels too heavy. There's a reason people call them heart dogs. Their connection runs deeper than obedience or habit. They don't just follow you, they feel you. A cavalier seems to know when something is wrong before you do. They notice the tremor in your voice, the hesitation in your breath, the way your eyes drift to the floor when you're trying to be strong. And in those moments, they do what no words ever could. They climb quietly into your lap, press their head into your hand, and remind you that love doesn't need fixing, only feeling. It's no wonder they've become the emotional guardians of so many homes. Children with anxiety sleep peacefully with a Cavalier by their side. Elderly hearts, once weighed down by silence, find comfort in their company. Even those who swore they would never love again find themselves smiling at the soft patter of little paws on the floor. Unlike many breeds, the Cavalier doesn't serve a single purpose. It fulfills many. It can run like the wind in open fields, chase butterflies with joyful abandon, yet spend hours perfectly still beside someone who cannot move. That duality of energy and empathy makes them extraordinary. To the untrained eye, they are just small dogs with beautiful coats and gentle faces. But those who know them understand they are emotional mirrors. They absorb what we feel, hold it without judgment, and somehow turn it into peace. Science calls it canine emotional intelligence. But those who have lived with a Cavalier know it's something simpler, something almost spiritual. It's connection. They have the rare gift of presence, the ability to make any moment, no matter how ordinary, feel like a small miracle. The sound of their paws on tile, the tilt of their head when you speak, the way they wait at the door, not because they're impatient, but because they believe in your return. They are loyal, but never possessive. Affectionate, but never demanding. It's a love so steady that even time struggles to take it away. In therapy centers around the world, Cavaliers have become symbols of calm, used to soothe those who have lost trust, to comfort veterans, to help children with autism find their voice. They don't teach lessons, they simply remind us what it feels like to be safe. A Cavalier doesn't care who you were yesterday or who you'll be tomorrow. It loves the version of you sitting right here, right now, tired, flawed, imperfect, and human. It is that heart, gentle, empathetic, unwavering, that makes the Cavalier unlike any other breed. It was once the companion of kings. Now it reigns over hearts instead. And perhaps that's the truest kind of royalty, not to rule with crowns and armies, but with kindness so profound it changes the room it enters. Because when a Cavalier looks at you, it doesn't just see a person, it sees home. In an age of noise and hurry, of screens that glow brighter than sunsets, and hearts that often forget how to rest, the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel remains a quiet miracle. It does not chase fame nor demand attention. It simply is. A small, breathing reminder of a gentler world. When you look into their eyes, you see something ancient there, a wisdom older than crowns, softer than silk. It's as if they remember everything humanity has forgotten. That kindness is strength, that patience is power, and that love, in its purest form, doesn't need to speak at all. The Cavalier has lived many lives as the lapdog of kings, the muse of painters, the comfort of soldiers, and the joy of children. But through every century, through every transformation, it has carried one purpose: to heal through presence. In modern hospitals, their paws echo down sterile hallways, bringing life where pain once lingered. In care homes, they curl up beside shaking hands and trembling hearts, teaching them that tenderness never grows old. In schools, they help children find courage to speak, to trust, to believe again. They do not cure illness, but they lighten it. They do not erase sorrow, but they share it, until it feels just a little lighter to bear. And when they play, oh, when they play, it is as if joy itself has taken form. Their ears flutter like banners in the wind, their tails paint happiness across the room. Every jump, every spin, every wag is a small rebellion against sadness. Because the Cavalier knows what the world so often forgets, that joy is not found in perfection, but in connection. They teach us to slow down, to notice, to breathe, to understand that life's greatest moments are the quiet ones, a shared glance, a head resting on your knee, a heartbeat pressed against your own. And when their time with us ends, as all time must, they do not truly leave. For love that pure does not vanish, it lingers. In the empty chair by the window, in the quiet creak of the floor where they used to lie, in the warmth that somehow remains long after the light has faded. We learn then what they were trying to tell us all along, that every moment we shared was not ordinary, it was sacred. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel is not just a breed, it is a legacy of grace, loyalty, and the infinite capacity of the heart. It is proof that gentleness survives every century, every war, every storm. From royal courts to humble homes, from oil paintings to digital screens, the Cavalier continues to reign, not with command, but with compassion, not by ruling nations, but by mending souls, because while crowns tarnish and empires fall, the love of a Cavalier endures. It endures in laughter, in tears, in the spaces between, where humans and dogs meet as equals, bound by something that needs no name. And perhaps that is why, centuries after its birth, this little spaniel still captures the human spirit so completely. It reminds us, quietly, tenderly, that to be noble is not to rule the world, but to love it.